So now I'm going to walk you through the Kitchener stitch, which is the final bit when knitting a sock. We're going to graft one side to the other, and it creates this pretty seamless effect. You can cut yourself a tail that's, probably a maximum of 12 inches. Doesn't have to be super long. So you can go ahead and thread your tail through your yarn needle, and you're ready to work the Kitchener stitch. So we're going to join our stitches from needle 1 to our stitches on needle 2. There are a couple different ways to do this. Some tutorials will have you do a setup and some will not. I'm going to show this to you without the setup. With our yarn coming from our back needle, it's attached to the last stitch on our needle 2, and we have needle 1 facing us, which is the beginning of round. The Kitchener stitch is made up of 4 steps. So on needle 1, you will knit off, purl on, and for needle 2, you will purl off, knit on. So a knit off means that you go into the stitch as if to knit it and slide it off the needle, pulling the yarn through. And a purl on means that you go into the stitch as if to purl, but leave it on the needle. And then a purl off means that you go into the stitch as if to purl it, pull the yarn through and slide it off the needle. And then a knit on means you go into the stitch as if to knit it, but leave the stitch on the needle. So needle 1 is a knit off, purl on. So I kind of just pull out the back needle just to get it out of the way. And we're going to knit off. So go into the first stitch as if to knit it, like this. Pull the yarn through and slide it off of your knitting needle. And I like to kind of pull on the yarn a little bit. And then we need to purl on. So go into the next stitch on needle 1 as if to purl. So from right to left. Pull the yarn through, but leave it on your needle. And now we switch gears and go to needle 2, where we will purl off, knit on. Go into the first stitch from right to left as if to purl. Pull the yarn through. You want the yarn coming underneath needle 1, not over top of it. And now we slide that stitch off of needle 2. We go into the next stitch on needle 2 as if to knit it, like this. Pull the yarn through it, but leave it on your needle. I like to pull just a little bit snug after each motion. So we've just decreased 1 stitch from each needle, so you should have 1 less than you started with, and that was your repeat. Back to the front needle. I kind of slide my stitches up on the closer needle, go into the next stitch as if to knit, pull the yarn through, and then slide it off. You can kind of tug on it to close it up a little bit, and then purl on. So go into the next stitch on needle 1 as if to purl. So from right to left, pull the yarn through, and that's halfway done. Now we need to purl off, knit on. So I go from right to left into the next stitch on my needle 2. Pull the yarn through and slide it off your needle, and then knit off. So go into that stitch as if to knit it. Pull the yarn through, but leave it on your needle. So you can also do this kind of in 1 motion instead of 2. So for needle 1, knit off, purl on, I go into the first stitch as if to knit, slide it off my needle, but my yarn needle is still in it. Go into the next one as if to purl, and then pull the yarn through. I find that to be easier. And then in the back, I purl off. So into the first stitch as if to purl from right to left, slide it off with my yarn needle still in it, and then go into the next stitch as if to knit, like this. Pull the yarn through. That I think is just slightly easier, but it's up to your preference. And now we have 2 left, so knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. And now we have only 1 stitch on each needle. So when you get down to the final 2 stitches, you're going to knit off needle 1 and purl off needle 2. So go into the first stitch on needle 1 as if to knit, and slide it off, and you can pull the yarn through, and then go into the final stitch on needle 2 as if to purl. So from right to left, pull the yarn through and slide it off. And you can kind of tug on the yarn to close up any gaps, but it'll look like this. Now that we have done our Kitchener stitch, you might have a little bit of like a tail That's okay, we can get rid of that when we're weaving in our ends. So I'm going to remove my beginning around marker because I don't need it anymore. So now I'm going to bring this tail yarn through to the wrong side of my sock. So what I do is I kind of roll it up a little bit just to make it easier to work with. Take my yarn needle, and with my other hand inside of the sock, I'm going to go from the right side to the wrong side. You don't want to undo anything that you've done. So my yarn is coming out of this stitch right here. So I want to be careful not to go back through that specific stitch. So just go down like a stitch below that or two below and bring it to the wrong side of your work. And then turn your sock inside out, and you can kind of pull a little bit tight on it. It should bring that kind of towards the inside. Here's the inside of our toe. So we are going to weave in our ends. This doesn't have to be super specific. There's no one right way or one wrong way to do this. You don't want to go directly straight down or straight over. You want to go kind of diagonal. So you could go just through some loops diagonally if you wanted, but I will show you how I do it. So I'll give you a quick little rundown on my extra sock because it's a little bit easier to show. So I don't know how well you can see this, but on the reverse side of a plain knit sock, you have just like rows of loops. They kind of go in this shape like this, which you can kind of see here. So it creates kind of like an upside down U, and I want to mimic that shape. I'll show you just quickly what it looks like before we use our actual example. So let's say that my yarn is coming out of here. I want to find a nearby loop. If I look nearby, there's this loop right here, which is this shape, if you can kind of see it. If this is it right here, I want to go through the bottom, up on the left, and then back down on the right. Go through the bottom, up on the left, pull through, down on the right side of that upside down U, and down through that bottom piece again. So you can't fully see it because some of it's hidden. It is that upside down U motion. If we look one more over, just in that same row, we can find another one, which is right here. So it goes up and around, and we want to mimic like this thread right here, which is the left half of this shape. We go in through the bottom piece, up on the left, down on the right, and down through the bottom. You just kind of want to do that same motion all the way across. So through the bottom of one loop, up on the left side, down on the right, and down through the bottom again. And then the next bottom loop over here, up through the bottom and up on the left side, down on the right side, and back through that bottom piece. That's just a quick basic tutorial on how I weave in my ends in stockinette. Let's apply that to our sock. So if I turn it upside down, I can see that I have these shapes, which some people think look more like a V. So I have them here because every knit stitch on the reverse side will look like this. Towards the side edges here, that's where our decreases are, so they look a little bit different. But essentially what I do is I just find like an area of knit stitches that are pretty close. So like right there. So what I'm going to do is try and get over to that. So I go underneath just a couple loops here that I can find. It doesn't have to be exact. I just go under a couple. Again, you don't want to go through the same stitch that your yarn is coming out of because you don't want to undo it. And I'm going to do that one more time just to get myself a little bit further down. And now I'm close to a stitch. So it kind of looks like this shape. It goes up on one side, around the loop at the top, and down. So we want to mimic that. So here's the very bottom of it. So we go up through the bottom, and then the left side of it here. And then here's the top of it. So we want to go around the top on the right side instead, and down, and then down through the middle that we came up through initially, and we've just mimicked this stitch here. Looks like extra thick because we basically have created an additional layer on top of it that looks exactly the same. And I'm going to go over another. So here's another one. So we find the very bottom of it, which is this one right here. Go up through the bottom. Here's the left side of that stitch. Go up. Here's the right side of it right here. Go down. Now you don't want to pull super tight. You want the tension of your stitch to look about the same as the one that you're mimicking. And then we just go down through the middle where we first came up through that stitch. So you can just do that a couple of times in a couple different stitches. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it any way that you prefer. This is just the most secure that I've found. And then I kind of take my needle and split a couple of stitches going diagonal. So I only pick up part of the stitch instead of the full one, like that. And then pull my yarn through. I can go ahead and cut my yarn. I leave just a tiny bit of a tail. My stitch has been wrapped up in a couple mimic stitches, and then we went diagonal and split a few stitches. So I'm confident that that is okay. I can go ahead and kind of turn my sock inside out. And now we want to look at the cast on tail and do virtually the same thing. So thread it through a yarn needle. Now, do you see the hole that it's coming out of? It's coming out of this hole right here. So we don't want to go through that hole because that will start to undo our cast on. I'm going to pick a different hole to go through and go from the right side to the wrong side. Pull my yarn through, turn it just a little ways inside out. You can weave your ends in however you see fit. This is just how I do it. I'm going to go up along the side of what looks like a knit stitch. So it looks like a bunch of V's that go like this. I'm going to go up along the right leg of it. So I'm just going to go up diagonal like that, pull through, go up diagonal through the next one, only the right leg. And I'm doing this until I get to the stockinette portion. We have a bunch of those same type of stitches. They might look like V's to you, or they might look like more of an octopus shape. But I want to mimic a couple of those stitches again. Pick a stitch. I'm going to pick this one right here. So here's the bottom of it. So I'm going to go up through the bottom. Here's the left side of it. Up through the left side. Here's the right side. So I go down through the right side. And I find that bottom again, which is right here. And I go down. And then I move over one stitch. So here's the next one over. I'm going to do the same thing. Go through the bottom, go through the left, down on the right, down through the bottom, up through the bottom, up through the left, kind of diagonal. Down on the right side, down on the bottom. Now you can do this for 2 or 3 stitches. You don't really have to do it for that many. And then I'm going to go split a couple stitches. Diagonal. Pull my yarn and cut with a little tiny bit of tail. Since this is the inside of my sock, I don't really care that much. And it is right here, but you can't tell from the right side that I've done that. So that's pretty much it. When it comes to washing and blocking your socks, this is something that I think is fairly popular online to use something like a sock blocker. But in my experience, a sock blocker is really great for displaying a stitch pattern in like a podcast. But when it comes to functionally using a sock blocker in your everyday life, I don't use them because I find that if I use a sock blocker, it stretches my sock out and then it doesn't fit like it should. What I do is I soak them, and you might put some wool wash or something in the water if you want, but I soak them. I gently push out the extra water in a towel. I lay them flat to dry. It may take a while because you've got 2 layers of fabric here. That's what I do. I let them dry for a couple days and then they're ready to wear. It also helps to even out any wonky stitches or anything like that. I just like how they naturally fit when you don't really tamper with them. That is how you knit a pair of vanilla socks. I hope this video was easy enough for you guys to follow so that you could knit your first pair of socks. Let me know if you've knit a pair of these in the comments. And if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe for more. And if you want any of my knitting patterns, you can find them on Etsy, Ravelry, and Lovecrafts. It's a great way to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Happy knitting!